This is normally a reasonable matchup for Tron, maybe even favorable, but it's going to be tougher. Rather than playing the 4 Pyroclasms you often see in red-green Tron, Joe Lossett is actually not playing any Pyroclasms today. His main deck removal spell is Lightning Bolt. And this is a matchup where that could cost him. Hawkins will start the game on Blink Moth Nexus into Memnite. Just 2 permanents. That's got to be good for Joe.
Yeah. Slower start's definitely a good sign, though the turn 2 is usually the big turn for Affinity.
Yeah. Grove of the Burnwills into Expedition Map for Lossett, and now we'll see just how good that turn 2 is. For Hawkins, we see Darksteel Citadel, Steel Overseer, Ornithopter, and a pass.
Well, this would be a juicy spot for Pyroclasm if Joe had them.
Yeah, and these 2 teammates very well versed with each other. I think Hawkins knows that Lossett has no Pyroclasms in the main. I'm not sure he'd play this game the same way if he was worried about them.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't walk into that, at least hang back the Ornithopter. This is still a good spot for Lightning Bolt, though Eric has plenty of cards still left over.
For Lossett, his turn 2 will be Sylvan Scrying and finds Urza's Power Plant. Now, of note, Joe's 2 lands right now are Basic Forest and Grove of the Burnwillows, so the earliest he can assemble Tron is on turn 5.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about Joe's hand here. I would assume that he would have something like Lightning Bolt in a hand that's just kind of doing nothing and has non-Tron lands. Be curious to see how this shapes up from here. This hand looks kind of loose.
But if there were a Lightning Bolt, I can't imagine that it wouldn't have gone onto the Steel Overseer.
Yeah, that's just too good of a target. The only thing that comes to mind, you might be building up to an Oblivion Stone, but that could easily be too slow.
Big turn for Hawkins. It's going to be a Glimmer Void, Cranial Plating, Equip. Met Steel Overseer puts counters onto all the creatures, and now we are bringing in the damages. So Memnite will be able to swing for 2. Ornithopter has 1 power, but Cranial Plating boosts it by 5. So we have 6 and 2. That's a swing for 8. Joe drops down to 11.
And with a Blink Moth Nexus in play, Eric will be able to make a lethal attack next turn.
Joe draws Urza's Mine, so he does have access to Tron between that map and the mine in his hand. But
he'll have access to Tron 2 turns after he loses this game.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a concern at this point.
Did he sneak in a main deck Ancient Grudge or something like that? What other nonsense is he holding?
Fog isn't bad here.
Yeah. Well, seeing as he would die if he didn't have it.
As soon as he hits Tron, he could do something like Oblivion Stone and sacrifice it.
Yes.
And that would clean it up rather nicely. Arcbound Ravager from Eric Hawkins. And now things are, activates Blink Moth Nexus. Steel Overseer puts a counter on everything. Swing for what is almost certainly lethal.
We're going to see a concession or a fog here, I'm pretty sure.
Memnite is 2. Blink Moth is 2. Ornithopter is 9. That's 13. And even if Joe hits something like an Oblivion Stone, that Arcbound Ravager and Blink Moth Nexus together would get around it, I think.
Yeah, Stone only hits non-land permanents.
And Joe will just pack in the cards as we are on to game 2. Eric Hawkins up 1-0.
I'm pretty skeptical at Joe's keep here. I mean, he knows Eric pretty well. He knows he's on Affinity.
Well, one of the impressive parts about Affinity is when left to its own devices, it wins on turn 4. It's remarkably consistent at doing it.
Yes.
You saw there, that was a turn 4 kill from Hawkins. Yep. And it just gets there in so many different ways.
And meanwhile, Joe cast Sylvan Scrying and Expedition Map. Yep. And picked up his cards. Yeah,
he cast no interactive spells. And that's when I play combo decks, right? So Affinity is not always as fast as a combo deck, but in my head, I'll be counting if it's a racing situation, I will assume that if I play no hate cards, Affinity will always have me dead on turn 4.
Fair assumption. Especially when they keep a 7-card hand, you have to assume that.
Yep. So we'll go to the sideboard. We'll start with Joe Lossett. 3 Thrag Tusk, 3 Warping Whale, 3 Nature's Claim, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Crumble to Dusk, an Engineered Explosives, a Sudden Shock, and a Forest.
Warping Whale is solid here. It hits a lot of the stuff that Eric has, particularly in that game. Warping Whale taking Steel Overseer would have been a huge swing. Nature's Claim is, of course, excellent. Engineered Explosives is pretty solid against Affinity as well. There's a lot of 2-drops in the deck. Sometimes even 0 can be a high-impact spell. And then Sudden Shock to deal with Arcbound Ravager. Those are the things I expect to come in for Joe. There's some argument for Thrag Tusk. It's a little slow, but it does gain life, which is significant.
All right, over on Eric Hawkins' side, we have 2 Ancient Grudges, a Thoughtseize, a Whip Flare, 2 Ghirapur Aether Grids, an Etched Champion that's to complement the 2 he already has in the main deck, a Blood Moon, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Relic of Progenitus, a Thoughtcast, a Dismember, and I like this one, a Seagate Wreckage.
Yeah, that one's a pretty spicy inclusion. Eric hasn't really had a lot to say about it in this tournament. He's brought it in twice. It was not good one time, and he was just winning the game by too much the other time. Big cards that we're bringing in here, the 2 copies of Thoughtseize. You can mess up Tron's hand that way. Make sure that they don't have some way to blow you out depending on how you play the board. Ancient Grudge is okay. There's some windows where you can hit Oblivion Stone when he casts it and isn't able to sacrifice it right away. So it wouldn't surprise me to see an Ancient Grudge. Those are kind of the big ones that I'm looking at here. There's some argument for Blood Moon, which could offset Tron, mess up Joe's tempo, and Affinity's a fast enough deck to take advantage of that.
Right. A lot of times we hear Tron pilots say, hey, Blood Moon is a bit of a red herring against their deck in that it only slows them down a turn at most, but a turn may be all Eric needs out of the card.
Right, exactly.
Well, the players getting ready for Game 2. We're going to tell you, if you haven't seen it yet, back in April, Max McVitie, we crowned him our Season 1 Invitational Champion. His reward was his likeness on a token. Now, Max, the mono-white humans player, an engineering student from Michigan, well, he chose to make himself an engineering clue here. So if you haven't got a chance to get this one, it's been given away at all of our opens and classics just for participation. So you can get that by showing up at anything here in Season 2. We now have that going on. If you can't make it out to one, you can get this art illustrated by SCG's own Christian Plesko by any order of $5 or more from our website. So that will be available while supplies last. This is something we do for all our invitational winners, so find out that at starcitygames.com.
Clue token, something that you're not going to want to find yourself without at a standard tournament, probably in the next year.
There's a lot of great cards that make clues right now.
I can't imagine Declaration Stone getting bad.
I don't want to give my opponents clues.
Well, it's more so you're going to play against somebody that casts Declaration in Stone and doesn't have a clue token to give you. That's just a thing that's going to happen.
So Eric Hawkins up a game here. Not familiar with the player from Nerd Rage Gaming from Minneapolis. He was the first player on the outside looking in for last year's Players' Championship, would like to improve that. The 32-year-old has 2 Open Series top 8s, still looking for that first win. He's a fairly big sports fanatic as well, playing basketball regularly, following hockey, football, baseball. He even does some commentary for those games.
Yeah, he told a story this weekend of a football game he had to cover where he was the only broadcaster. So he did play-by-play and color, which is like the most miserable thing I could possibly imagine.
Well, there's no one to disagree with you. It sounds great, you know?
Yeah. So what he said is every strategical piece of advice he gave was correct.
It would mean I'm always right. That sounds great.
Yeah, there's just something to that.
Joe will be on the play here for Game 2.
Sign-ups for 1 o'clock. 2-headed giant sealed are open.
But it looks like Eric Hawkins not going to have a keep here. He'll go down to 6 cards. Now, Joe Lossett, a player who very well known here on the SCG Tour from Redlands, California. He is currently 4th in the Player of the Year race. Also on Team Nerd Rage Gaming, a full 20 Open Series top 8s, as well as 5 open wins, 2 invitational top 8s. Still looking for that first invitational win. But surprisingly, he's known originally as the Miracles Master, the Miracles Pilot, but has had a lot more added to the resume. Now known as a Tron player on top of that. Usually picks one standard deck. Little known fact, more of his open wins are in non-legacy formats than they are in legacy.
Right, though he certainly has a lot of classic wins.
He is cleaned up in the Sunday Classics with Miracles.
I don't know if he has any room on his wall for more plaques.
Yeah. Streams over at Orsman79 on Twitter and on Twitch. So Hawkins will survey the 6.
Affinity is a deck that has to mulligan a good amount, though oftentimes your mulligan hands, they don't come together super well. The deck is all about synergies between a lot of smaller parts, trying to piece everything together, particularly in post-sideboard games. A lot of mulligans are pretty easily picked apart by 1 or 2 interactive cards from your opponent.
He will be going down to 5. You are looking for something to jumpstart your hands, whether it's a Mox Opal or an Arcbound Ravager. These hands of, say, some lands, a Memnite, an Ornithopter, they don't do too much.
If your entire mulligan philosophy is lands and spells, I would never recommend that you play Affinity.
Yeah, there are lots of hands with the right number of lands and spells that are far from keepable.
Yes. There's even a lot of hands that look like they do a lot of the things that the deck does. Say you keep a hand that's 3 creature lands, a Memnite, an Ornithopter.
And a Ravager even, right? Like
yeah, you could even have a Ravager in this hand and it would still be bad.
You're playing a bunch of 1/1s. I mean, unless you're planning to sacrifice your whole team to that Ravager.
Yeah, you don't have a Mox Opal to get ahead on tempo. Your only payoff card is a 2-mana 1/1. A lot of modern decks are going to run you over before that really matters.
All right, so we are underway. Joe starts out on an Urza's Mine into Chromatic Sphere. Hawkins did keep on 5. The Scry was to the bottom. Starts on Signal Pest Memnite. So there is some synergy there.
Yeah, this is a solid enough start. I believe he does have a Ravager in his hand as well. I don't know if he has a second land.
Joe will go ahead and crack the Chromatic Sphere. He draws Lightning Bolt, however, we'll see what color mana he chose to make there. Looks like it was green as he plays Urza's Mine and Sylvan Scries for the tower. Ooh, not for the tower. Stand corrected. Sylvan Scries for Grove of the Burn Willows.
Yeah, so in these sideboarded games, a lot of times the Tron deck is just going to try to play a little bit lower to the ground, play to casting Ancient Grudge, Lightning Bolt, and just stopping the Affinity deck from killing you and then winning eventually.
Hawkins' turn 2 will be a swing for 2 points of damage and then casting Arcbound Ravager.
You know, part of that, one of the bigger payoff cards for Tron is Ugin the Spirit Dragon, which is just actually objectively terrible against Affinity.
Yeah, I don't exiling all the colorless creatures. I'm not non-colorless creatures. Doesn't sound great. And now we see why Joe is okay scrying for that red source. He plays Expedition Map, passes the turn, so he has a Lightning Bolt in hand that he's holding up mana for. And in the case that he doesn't need the mana, he can go get that tower.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
From Hawkins, we see Darksteel Citadel. So he has 2 Inkmoth Nexus as his other lands. Has a Thought Cast in hand that he cannot cast. I believe a red spell to go with it.
Yeah, he's shy a Glimmer Void or a Mox Opal to start doing things. As things stand, he technically has some decent attacks, but his board is pretty anemic.
Activates an Inkmoth Nexus. Looks like he'll just swing the team. So, Battle Cry from the Signal Pest means all the other creatures are attacking for 2.
If you were in the room and not in the match.
It's like Sudden Shock in Joe's hand.
The Lightning Bolt hanging out as well. He makes them easy to spot by playing revised copies.
Well, Sudden Shock actually has some play against Arcbound Ravager here.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
He'll Sudden Shock the Ravager. Eric cannot sacrifice any artifacts in response. So the Ravager will hit the graveyard. It will modular onto Inkmoth Nexus.
And then Joe will be taking 3 poison off of this combat. Only 2 points of regular damage.
Right. So Joe now goes to 16 and 3 poison.
And I like the modular onto the land there. Even though Eric is not super likely to win this game off of poison, the sweepers that would take care of the other creatures wouldn't impact the Inkmoth Nexus. He also does have second Nexus, so, you know, poison's not very far from the question here. It could be the avenue to victory in this game.
You go back over to Lossett, you see Basic Forest and Lightning Bolt in his hand. He could still crack that map for the tower. He's got to still figure out the safest way to play this. Those 3 poisons shouldn't be ignored.
No, certainly not.
He'll play the forest and just pass the turn. So really deprioritizing finding Tron. Just wants to stay alive here.
Yeah, just trying to interact. For sure wants to be able to cast that Lightning Bolt on this turn.
So with Hawkins' hand, he drew a Ravager for the turn. So now he has Ravager, Ancient Grudge, Thoughtcast. Only the Arcbound Ravager is castable here. The Multiply had a lot of play to it, but he hasn't found a colored mana source. He's still waiting on that Mox Opal, Glimmer Void, Springleaf Drum.
Right. The Ravager is a solid draw here, though.
He'll cast Arcbound Ravager. We'll see if Joe wants to respond. He does not. A swing with Signal Pest and Memnite means 2 more regular damage. So Lossett goes to 14. So now he is equally close at dying the 2 different ways.
And there's a lot of uncertainty with regard to what Joe wants to target with this Lightning Bolt, and the Ravager only compounded that issue. There's an argument for Signal Pest. You know, there was an argument for going for the Inkmoth Nexus with the counter on it. Now things are just messy with the Ravager in play.
So Joe's going to crack the map for power plant. And I actually have to correct back because this is the different arts. Those 2 Tron pieces are both Urza's mines. So Joe's actually 2 lands off of Tron as opposed to 1 land off of Tron. Which that will explain a lot more of the plays here.
It looks like Joe's looking to fire off an end-step lightning bolt. The Ravager forced the issue.
Bolt will go at Arcbound Ravager. Does Hawkins want to try to save it? It would be most of his permanents.
I think the most likely line is that he activates Inkmoth Nexus, lets the Ravager die, and just moves the counter onto the Nexus.
So does he put both the counter on the Nexus with a counter or on the Nexus without a counter?
I like Nexus without a counter because the other Nexus still would die to Lightning Bolt.
That's a choice we'll have to make. Inkmoth Nexus taps. It's going to activate one of the 2 creature lands. Looks like he's going to put both of them on 1.
The other consideration is Eric still does not have mana to activate both Nexi in the same turn.
Sure. And then while it's there, Joe's going to Nature's Claim away the Nexus. So Hawkins is punished for loading on 1 Inkmoth there.
Didn't really have good alternatives, though. Punished might be excessive.
Oh, I mean, putting it on the other Inkmoth.
Sure.
He's down 1 counter.
Yep.
So the power plant is now in play for Joe. So he has 2 mines and a power plant, up to 5 mana. Hawkins will activate Inkmoth, attack with the team. So 2 damage, 2 poison.
Now there's a question if Joe has any more interactive spells left over. Just 2 cards left in hand.
Hawkins' draw was a Memnite. He'll cast it. Still has that Ancient Grudge and Thoughtcast in hand. The Grudge doesn't seem like it will be relevant at this point.
No, we're in this territory where Oblivion Stone can be cast and activated on the same turn.
Joe's going to go ahead and he's going to go ahead and crack an Expedition map on his end step. Finds Tower. Now he has full Tron. 11 mana available for Lossett.
Presumably Ulamog is currently in the sideboard, but other payoff cards like Karn or here's a World Breaker.
I love
excellent.
this one against Affinity. Yeah, you cast World Breaker off 7. That exiles the Inkmoth Nexus. And most importantly, it has reach to block all these creatures.
Yeah, and that makes it so that modular counter wouldn't have mattered no matter where Eric put it.
Here's the Glimmer Void that Hawkins was looking for. For 1 mana, he'll draw 2. Maybe too late, though, for the Affinity player.
Yeah, there's nothing like a dispatch in Eric's 75 that World Breaker is just going to hang out and be a very good blocker here.
Lossett draws, plays another tower. He's up to 14 mana. See Wormcoil Engine in Joe's hand. He's going to attack with World Breaker. Hawkins will go to 17.
Yeah, currently the only creature that the Wormcoil engines would not be able to block is the Signal Pest, which connects for 0 damage. So I like the attack there.
Well, how about 2 Wormcoil Engines?
I would argue that that's better than 1.
Eric has an Ancient Grudge in his hand, but not enough colored sources to play both halves of it.
Not to mention the fact that he's looking at 6 artifacts he needs to destroy and a World Breaker kicker.
Yeah, I think the question is if he had red and green, he could deny life gain for 1 turn and then maybe untap and get the rest of the damage in, but this is going to be tough. Has another Thoughtcast he'd like to use as well. So he'll lead on that. Draws 2, hoping for a perfect pair of cards. Finds Darksteel Citadel Cranial Plating. Great cards, but it may just be too late. Joe looks like he'll get to connect with some of these Wormcoils. So here Hawkins will play Cranial Plating, pass the turn.
And now Joe actually has a lethal attack on this turn, so Eric will have to chump block at least one of these creatures.
Right, there's exactly 17 power in play for Lossett. He'll leave back, now that he sees the Cranial Plating, it looks like he's going to leave back the World Breaker as a blocker, but he'll swing both Wormcoil Engines. Eric will take the damage, so Hawkins goes to 5, Lossett to a healthy 24. Now we'll see if Hawkins will need a huge turn. Draws Vault Scourge.
Going up to 24, I believe I'd swing the World Breaker. The most concerning thing would be if Eric still had an Ink Moth Nexus.
Sure, the life gain wouldn't matter then.
Yeah, seeing as Joe can't be poisoned, I would have liked to attack with all 3 creatures on that turn.
Vault Scourge for Eric Hawkins. Well, that one, in conjunction with cranial plating, can offset some of these life losses. We'll confirm life totals here in a second. All right, confirmed. Hawkins is at 7 to Lossett's 24.
And now he's in a position, the cranial plating will make it so whatever he puts it on will trade with the World Breaker, though very far from making inroads on that 24 life that Joe has.
And you don't even want to trade with World Breaker because then Joe can buy it back and recast.
Yep. It doesn't really get you anywhere.
Every time Joe gets to cast that World Breaker, he exiles away another artifact. So we go back to Lossett. Cranial Plating was equipped to Memnite. Remember, Eric Hawkins does have enough mana up for 1/2 of the Ancient Grudge in his hand. Lossett looks like debating if he wants to swing the team or leave back World Breaker.
The only thing that I assume is giving Joe pause is the fact that Eric is not conceding. You know, what's he up to over there? You know, the attack with all creatures just seems so good.
Well, Eric Hawkins does not typically concede in his matches. If Joe's, I don't know if he's aware of that, but Eric will play from a dead position for a while.
Yeah, he has very good table composure, so certainly selling that he's still playing Magic, even if on the table it looks like he's really not.
Full swing from Joe. So this is an attack for 17. Eric will have to block 2 of these creatures. Looks like Memnite's going to block a Wormcoil Engine. The 5 damage from World Breaker will be let through. I think we're going to see the part of that Ancient Grudge from Eric Hawkins be cast.
Yeah, save some life and deny Joe some as well. Safely take the 5 off of the World Breaker.
A Grudge for the Wormcoil Engine. 2 3/3s for Joe. Joe will go to 30. Hawkins will drop to 2.
Now, the damage output potential of cranial plating makes it so Joe's life's total, he's still certainly in range to lose this game. Eric has a lot more work to do to get there, though, and there's so much pressure now. Joe has 5 lethal creatures in play at this point in time.
Yeah. Doubles of each token now as that Wormcoil Engine traded on Losette's side.
Moving the plating over to the Vault Scourge can gain Eric some life on this turn, though this one should be over within 1 turn cycle.
Well, this is interesting. A Arcbound Ravager from Eric Hawkins means he could deny Joe some life gain. He'll cast the Arcbound Ravager. He will equip Cranial Plating to the Vault Scourge. He's left up Glimmer Void for that Ancient Grudge, and he's going to go to work on seeing if he can take down that 30-point life total.
Yeah, we'll give it the old college try.
All right, Vault Scourge is going to swing, it looks like, along with Signal Pest. So a healthy amount of damage.
Eric's really just mathing out whether or not he has to block with the Signal Pest, how much life he's going to gain, whether 1 makes a difference.
So the Vault Scourge is a 1/1. There are 3 Citadels in play for Hawkins, so his artifact count is 8. So that will be a life gain of, to be a swing of 18. Now Hawkins will go up to 11. Lossett.
Well.
Oh, wow. Lossett with the fog.
So much for that.
Just kidding. Let's keep it at 30 and 2. Brutal.
I mean, that was a long shot anyway, and get got by a fog there certainly doesn't feel good.
It is sealed spectacular players.
Lossett draws Ancient Stirrings. Trying to close this one out for a 3rd game. Karn Liberated is found. And all right, Hawkins he'll concede to that one. We are on to a 3rd game.
Yep, seen enough at this point. And, you know, with the deck as fast as Affinity, there's no clock pressure that really incentivizes Eric to concede. He got confirmation there that Fog is still in Joe's deck, so that's good. Knows about that one.
So they'll go back and look at sideboards. The Fog in Joe's deck kept in. That's a main deck Fog that he's played for this weekend, admitting that he has some trouble with Infect and Suicide Zoo. Now, an interesting thing as these players' sideboard here we want to talk about, decks like Infect, we have the Day 2 metagame breakdown, and that one's available now over in our coverage page at StarCityGames.com. 85 players made it into Day 2 with a record of 7-2 or better. Now, I don't think it's any surprise to you, the most popular deck at 10 copies in the field was Jund for the weekend. And you talked about how that was the most popular deck in Modern.
Yep.
But right behind it at 9 copies is actually Infect.
That is surprising. That is a high volume in Infect. I would not be surprised to see a deck like Infect having a good conversion rate. The level of popularity is what surprises me.
That many players playing it, and that many doing so well with it. Now we know that both of the Jessup brothers are playing it, both Andrew and Dan.
Yep. And TeamMetaGameGurus.com not big on losing, so of course they're 2 of those Day 2 players. Green-Red Tron in 3rd place, 7 copies there.
Yeah, so Tron, the number 3 deck here, and we've been seeing that a lot in our at our SCG Opens, that Tron has really established itself as one of the major pillars of the format. Rounding out the top 5 decks, we have Jeskai Control at 5 copies, and in a resurgence here, Obzon Company, 5 copies in today too.
Yeah, Obzon Company has had a little bit of a dry spell, but it's still a very good deck. Of course, Collected Company can feel like cheating at times, a couple infinite combos as well. The deck is very resilient, so.
So if you're watching us all weekend here on Twitch.tv, it's where we're broadcasting, as well as on our own website at StarCityGames.com. Now, you can now join the feature match area with us with our Twitch subscription program. Right now, you notice that the Twitch chat is subscriber only. We did that to improve the content. Of course, subscribers do get to chat all weekend, get custom emoticons, badges, and now the new thing we've premiered here in Season 2 is you get to decide the quarterfinals. So as we get to our top 8 later today, we will have, of the 4 quarterfinals match, we will ask for voting during the break between round 15 and the quarterfinals. Of course, subscribers get to vote as to what they want to see on camera, and we will broadcast accordingly. So that's at twitch.tv/SCGLive.
Yeah, sign up for your opportunity to vote for which member of Team Metagame Gurus you want to watch play in the quarterfinals.
How many do you think are we looking at to make Day 2, to make top 8?
Make top
all 5? All 5?
All 5 of this round would be a very strong prediction with that many X2s. I think that 2.5 is the line I would set.
I'm going to go bolder. I'm going to say 4.
4?
4 are going to make it.
All right. I'm leaning 3.
Right.
I think we're both on the over on the 2.5 line.
See, I made a bold 4, and then it's like, but you snuck in at 3 there.
Did you want me to go for 1 or 0? They're all going to miss. Everyone's going to miss.
No. It's that thing where it's like, like in Price is Right, where one guy's like, I'll say $300, and the other guy's like, $301. And then it's like, so you metagamed my pick real well there.
You watch the faces change and the reactions to the other bidders when the last person says $1. Drew, I almost said Bob. I guess it's Drew Carey now. It might be somebody different now, but anyway, they bid $1 and everyone else gets mad. It's like, no, you did a stupid thing and you let them beat you with a $1 bid. That's your fault, not theirs.
Hawkins is on the play here for Game 3. He'll start out on Inkmoth Nexus into Vault Scourge. See, what I did is when the guy bids the exact dollar amount and then the bell rings, it's like, yeah, you can $1 me all you want.
Yeah.
If I just say it right, there's no defense.
Oh, yeah, exactsies is not high. That's what you go for.
Well, that's what I did. 4 of them are going to make top 8.
Yeah, I went for exactsies with 3. I didn't even just like...
No, you $1'd me.
I did not. I took the over on the line.
It should be like 3.9. You should just rub it in.
Like the loose play is just taking over or under. Like locking in on 3 is a firm pick.
For Joe Lossett, Ancient Stirrings off Grove of the Burn Willows here. Sees a Sudden Shock. Can't take that one. The 1 Sudden Shock in the main deck. He has a second in the sideboard.
Yeah, that's the split second copy.
Takes Oblivion Stone off the Ancient Stirrings.
Did you see what I did there?
Yeah, that was good. Steel Overseer for Eric Hawkins. Mox Opal, there we go. That's Affinity. Signal Pest, Swing with Vault Scourge, 19 for Joe Lossett.
This would be another great window for Pyroclasm if Joe had them, though once again, Lightning Bolt is kind of the minimum. He needs to have that.
So I know you care about card borders. I'll tell you, when I've had multiple copies of the same card in the main and the board, there's a Sudden Shock on Steel Overseer for Joe. I will play different arts of the two, one for the main deck copy and one for the sideboard copy, so I always remember when I'm looking through the deck and be like, oh, I have to go back to my game 1 configuration so that I can remember which one to board out.
Yeah, I do some of that.
Is this acceptable, or is this, no, I'm playing mismatched cards, I'm still a scrub?
I think that's acceptable. One thing that I prefer over that is if you have like a pro-stamped copy and you know that's main deck or sideboard.
Yeah.
That's how my 3-1 Spell Pierce split is for Legacy.
Hawkins' turn 3 is going to be a Cranial Plating and equipped to Vault Scourge, so we'll swing with that and Signal Pest. So the Scourge starting out as a 1-1. The Plating counts 4 artifacts in play, makes it a 5-1, and Signal Pest will boost it up to 6. So 6 damage in, Lossett will drop to 13.
Joe had the requisite minimum of the Sudden Shock to deal with the Overseer, but the Plating follow-up is pretty backbreaking.
Keep in mind that even if Joe has the removal spells, there's both a Blink Moth and an Ink Moth Nexus in play for Eric Hawkins.
Yep, not at this stage able to move the Cranial Plating at instant speed with the double black casting cost with just the Mox Opal, but a Glimmer Void would change that in short order.
Go back to Lossett. He made one of his Urza pieces last turn. Plays Chromatic Sphere. Uses Grove of the Burn Willows to crack the sphere. Finds, I think, another Chromatic Sphere. Some wheel spinning here. We do know that Joe has a Oblivion Stone that he found off Ancient Stirrings turn 1. When he makes Tron, he'll be able to play and crack it immediately. Ancient Stirrings is used off that green mana.
What Joe would really like to find off of this Ancient Stirrings is Warping Whale. He doesn't need these big spells. He needs to be able to interact efficiently.
Finds Urza's Mine, plays that. Plays Chromatic Star, but now he is tapped out, and he's going to ship to Eric Hawkins. Can he deal 13? Memnite, second Cranial Plating, equip. That is a swing, and that is lethal. Game and match. Eric Hawkins and Affinity to win the day.
Yeah, we don't see a ton of Affinity anymore, but Eric Hawkins is showing us why that might be a mistake. On great pace for making the top 8 of this event, 11-2, despite a pretty rough start to his tournament.
Yeah, he's now on a 9-match win streak as he blazes his way toward the top 8. And once again, you know, I was talking about Affinity and the strategy when you play against it. What turn were we on there when Hawkins won? I believe that's a turn 4 kill yet again.